Hey guys, welcome to another episode of A Little Bit of Everything with Erin. Today we will be turning a water bottle into a really nice alcohol ink design, and we'll be using alcohol inks, vinyl, and epoxy to do this. So I just picked up this tumbler for like $4 at Walmart. I took the lid off and I went ahead and put some electrical tape over the opening. I don't want anywhere where the customer's mouth is going to be to touch where I'm going to be placing epoxy. So that's going to stop all that happening. So it's black, and for the alcohol inks to pop, I need this to be white. They didn't have a white one, so I went with the black. And I'm going to use some white primer spray paint that I have at home to turn this black. I'm also wearing gloves. It's a good idea to always have protection on. So I'm just going to do an even coat on my cup. I use electric tape instead of painter's tape because it comes off easier and doesn't leave any harsh marks where like the paint or the epoxy dries. I'm also going to be doing the bottom of mine. You can tape off anywhere on your cup, top, bottom, middle, wherever you don't want any paint to show. Make sure you're doing this outside or in an open area. I'm in my garage with my garage door open, so you don't breathe in any of the fumes. Okay guys, now we're going to go on to our next step. We're going to add our alcohol inks to our bottle that has been primed white. You can get alcohol inks on Amazon or head over to a store like Michael's or Hobby Lobby. I got the Jacquard Pinata inks off of Amazon. This is a really good brand. Amazing inks. And then I also picked up some of the Jim Holtz alcohol inks at Hobby Lobby. These come 3 in a pack, so it does get a little expensive for these. I usually only buy 1 pack a day if I go, and I use my like 40% off coupon or whatever. For the Pinata one, I was able to get like 8 colors in a package, and I think I spent like 20 bucks on Prime, so I even got it shipped for free, which is awesome. I had a couple of metallics. I really bought it because I needed the white for another project, and white alcohol ink is really hard to come by. So anyway, I'm also going to be using a makeup sponge, just one of these triangle ones. I'm actually in the middle of cutting it. I'm going to cut it in like 3 or 4 pieces. Alright, so what I like to do is I start off with my lighter color, and I just put some of that on the makeup sponge, and then I just start dabbing it all over the cup. If you're doing your bottom, make sure you get that dabbed also. And as the ink dries on the sponge, you'll get lighter spots. That's fine because you're going to be doing this for a little while. I recommend wearing gloves because the ink can stain your skin. So just for purposes of getting through this quickly, I'll show you what I would do next. I'm going to grab my black, same thing, just add some to my sponge, and then just dabbing in the middle. Sorry, mom jokes. And don't forget the bottom and up close to your rim. As you can see, I still have my black electrical tape on there. We'll take it off we'll take part of it off right before we get ready for the epoxy. So I've got a lot of filling in to do, so I know you don't want to watch all that because that's kind of boring. So I'm going to pause here, and when we come back, it'll be all set. Okay, so we've got it all dabbed. There's a little bit of white peeking in here and there. I'm not really worried about that. we're going for like a watercolor effect anyway, so the white will be fine. I got the bottom and up at the top by the rim. Some of it went over the tape, but again, not worried about it because that's what the tape's there for. So next I'm going to just get my alcohol ink. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. My alcohol, not my alcohol ink. So with the alcohol, you want to make sure that you purchase 91%. If you do any lower, this will not work correctly. So you can buy the 91 at stores like Target, Walmart. I'm pretty sure Walgreens sells it too. So let me go grab that because I don't have it out here. Okay, so 91%. This one, as you can see, is the Walmart brand. I'm going to take the extra sponge that I had cut. So the first thing I do is I just start dabbing again. And you can see it makes what we call cells in the alcohol color that we laid down. This is what gives it that watercolored effect. Kind of smooths it all out. Hard to pick up in here. Might be because of the sun from coming in from the garage. Worst comes to worst, I'll take a picture inside and add it to the video so you can see it a little better. So I just keep dabbing, kind of breaking it up a little bit, the color. Another thing that I like to do is I like to get some of the alcohol ink or the alcohol on my fingers, and I just kind of flick it. And you can see how it breaks up the color. I usually do that after I get it all dabbed with the makeup sponge, and then I give it a little bit more of that pop so it gets more of that watercolored effect. See, and these are what we call the cells, how it breaks up like that. So I'm going to continue to do that, and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so we have flicked alcohol at it to get these little cells. We've rubbed some alcohol in it with a makeup sponge to do a little bit of blending. So we've got this nice little thing going on here. And you can do more than 2 colors. I just prefer to do 2 colors. All in preference. So the next step, you can skip this one, but when I skipped this step, it didn't work out too well for me. I might be posting that video just to show you like when something happens how you can kind of fix it. We'll see. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add a layer of triple thick glaze over this, and then we'll get on with the epoxy. So I'll be right back. So I've now popped a hole in my electrical tape, and I'm just going to apply this to my hand turner, and I'll get a better shot of that for you. Okay, so for my hand turner, I took a cardboard box. I poked a hole on each side of the box and put a PVC pipe through it. And this bottle has a short opening or small opening, so I don't need a football to hold it. So it's just right on the PVC pipe. I also have a gallon of my kids' glue that they use for making slime in here just to add some weight to it. As you can see on this side, the PVC pipe sticks out, so I rotate it and it spins the cup for me. So we're going to let that dry for a couple minutes before we start our epoxy. Okay, we're going to start our epoxy. I'm going to jump on my soapbox for a minute. If you watched any of my previous videos about epoxy, you already know what's coming. I've seen way too many videos of women showing you how to do these different tumblers with epoxy, and they are doing it completely wrong. There are a couple main rules with epoxy. 1, wear gloves. Always. Do not do the finger method where you're putting the epoxy on your tumbler and not wearing gloves. It's just stupid. Please don't do it. Number 2, well ventilated area. Do not be doing this in your house. You are going to harm your children and your pets. I am in my garage with my garage door open, yard sale stuff, saws. Also, respirators. You can pick them up on Amazon. They're awesome. You might not think you're allergic to epoxy, but we all are in some way. So you want to be using a respirator for breathing. This will give you a massive headache, and you don't want that, trust me. So I'm going to put this on. You're not going to be able to hear me, so I'm going to do a voiceover. Next step is measuring out your epoxy. Most epoxies come in a 1-to-1 ratio. You're going to add equal amounts of part A and part B. Be sure to read the directions of your epoxy to see if that is the same thing. There are some that have different ratios. If you're going to Michael's or Hobby Lobby to buy epoxy, make sure you buy the blue package of Amazing Clear Cast blue package, not the purple one. So I'm just doing parts A and B. I purchased my epoxy in bulk. I usually get it off of eBay because I can typically find a better deal. Epoxy is pretty expensive, so you're always looking for the best deal to get. I always pour in part B really slow because it's thinner than part A, and I'm trying to get the most accurate measurement. That's why it's taking me forever and a day to get to 32. Once you have them together, you want to start mixing. I use craft sticks from the craft store because they're cheap. You want to mix this for 3 minutes, and you want to mix very slowly so that you don't get many air bubbles in it. Last minute, I decided to get a little purple glitter and a little of black silverish glitter and add it directly into my epoxy. I did just a little bit of both and then mixed that again. Now I moved over to my hand turner, and I'm just using the what everyone calls finger method and applying the epoxy by using my finger to try to get a smooth, even coat. Make sure you go up to your electrical tape. Again, I use the electrical tape because it is easier to remove than the painter's tape. Don't forget to do the bottom of the cup if you're doing the bottom. Once I get a thin layer on, I rotate the cup somewhat and continue laying down the epoxy. And we will do this all the way around. I tend to always make a little too much epoxy, so I have a bunch of different molds. I actually have a drawer here full of different molds, and then I just pour the excess epoxy in these molds. These are little gummy bears. These are little hearts and crowns and bows, and then I just put them in a jar. And if I'm making like a painting or a phone case or something, I'll just take these out. These are great for like little necklaces and earrings and stuff like that. Anyway, that's just something you could do with your epoxy if you have excess silicone molds. You can find them on Etsy, eBay, Amazon, sometimes in your baking section of your store. Okay, so we're still just spinning. We don't really have a lot of drips. I don't do thick layers, so I just watch it. I want to peel the electric tape off before the epoxy actually hardens though, so that I don't have any rough edges that I'll have to buff out. So I'm just carefully peeling that off now. Just be sure not to touch the cup itself. When I put my second layer of epoxy on, I'm not going to come up as high as I did anyway. That's mainly going to be on the cup itself, not up high here. And that's more or less to seal in the vinyl that we'll be adding on. Alright guys, we're on to our next step. Quick disclaimer, if you hear any background noise, it's the 1-year-old. I usually do this when she's napping, but we're kind of in a time crunch today, so she's awake. Anyway, I've cut out my vinyl. This is my daughter's name and her logo for her soon-to-be nonprofit. Emily has epilepsy. She's had it for about 10 years now, and she makes and donates these little teddy bears that she calls Epi Bears to hospitals around the world so they can give them out to newly diagnosed children of epilepsy. So while they're going through their EEG testing or brain scans, they have a little buddy to take with them so they aren't scared. And this is the logo she drew up for the company or the nonprofit. So our cup is here on our stand. This was made by a friend of mine so that I could put my cups on there and get my vinyl on straight. So I'm going to start with the logo. I put a white offset behind it so that we're not doing purple on purple. I'm just using some contact paper to lift the vinyl and transfer it over to the cup. I want to put it there. I always start in the middle and then roll one way and then roll the other way. And now we'll get her name. And this is just a little burnishing tool that I got in an old Cricut set like 10 years ago. You can pick up similar things at Walmart in the baking section for less than $1. I have a couple of those too, or some companies like Heat Transfer Vinyl, the number 4, the letter U.com. They sell a bunch of varieties of those for different prices. They're fairly cheap. And directly opposite of that, perfect. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it in here, but that little bit of purple and the black glitter that I put in there, it's fun in the light. You can see it sparkle a little bit, but I like to do those little bits of details. I think they're fun, eye-catching, especially when the sun just hits it right. And then we have these little bits that are bigger that I just kind of flung in there after we put on some of the epoxy. So now that that's ready, we're going to do another layer of epoxy to make sure we seal in our vinyl and make sure everything is good to go. So let's get that step going next. So I've just gone ahead and made another small cup of epoxy, and I'm just going to do like we did before with the finger method, just putting it on and wiping back and forth with my finger. This coat I'm going to do a little bit thicker than the first coat, just because vinyl is a little thicker on the cup, so I want to make sure that it's nice and smooth over that. You might find that you'll need to do a couple of coats. It just depends on how thick you make that second coat here that we're doing now. And don't forget to do the bottom again to make sure that the cup is nice and even and sits flat. And I'm just going up to the top of the rim there just carefully because I took all the electrical tape off because I'm not going to go past it like I did before, to make sure all the ink and the paint and everything was all covered, because now we know that it is. So I will just keep doing this, going back and forth, rolling or turning the cup, getting the bottom. If you kind of look on the sides, you can kind of see if you missed a spot, you'll see like a little dry patch, and that's what I was just doing there to make sure that I got a full coverage on that side. And for those of you who are like me and hand turn, my rule of thumb is it really depends on how thick you put on the epoxy. But for the first hour, I try to roll my cup after all the epoxy's on every 5 minutes. That second hour, I like to do about every 10 minutes. The third hour, if I see that some of the epoxy is still kind of moving, I like to do about every 15 minutes. The fourth hour, I'll do every 30 minutes, and that's just to make sure everything is looking good. And the last hour, I'll just do it randomly every now and then. I'll just go out and check it. Epoxy typically dries in 4 to 6 hours. That's why I like to keep it moving. It's not like it's in a mold. So I just like to keep it moving a little bit just to make sure if there is any flow that it still goes around the cup in an even manner. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to speed the rest of this up because it's really just me getting epoxy on my finger and rubbing it all over the cup. And I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch all of that. Okay guys, moment of truth. I'm taking it off my PVC pipe and adding the lid. It's been on here for 8 hours now. And it looks awesome. And in the light, because it's dark out now and I have my light on in here, you can kind of pick up some of the light sparkle we put in there. Remember, I mixed a little purple and a little silvery black fine glitter in the clear epoxy before I added it on. And then I flicked some of the larger pieces on there of glitter. Awesome. So yeah, that's how you do that. I'm actually gonna leave this probably on the pipe, the PVC pipe, until the morning. It's not sticky. You can see where I dropped it. Whoops. It's not sticky, but I like to give it a full 24 hours to cure. I took it off to finish this video because we go back to the hospital with the baby tomorrow for a couple of days, and I want to get this video up for you guys while I'm there. Make sure you read your epoxy. Some of them do need a couple of extra days to cure before you would actually give this to a customer. I like to wait about 72 hours just to be on the safe side. And make sure you let your customer know it's handmade, so hand wash. You do not want to put something like this in the dishwasher. The epoxy won't be able to handle it. And if you are really good, you can do your lid too. Just make sure that you don't do the seal. So there's that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment down below. I try to answer those as quickly as possible. Please don't mind me. I just got out of the shower, heading to the hospital in the morning for Willow. You can look her up by doing the hashtag WillowStrong on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, happy crafting!